Doing number 14 of method argument from logical reasoning by type 2. P. Complying with the new safety regulations is useless. Even if the new regulations had been in effect before last year's laboratory fire, they would not have prevented the fire or the injuries resulting from it because they do not address its underlying causes. All right, now Q. But any regulations that can potentially prevent money from being wasted are useful. If obeyed, the new safety regulations will prevent some accidents, and whenever there is an accident here at the laboratory, money is wasted even if no one is injured. Great, so let's look at the conclusions for these. We have P, whose conclusion is, of course, complying with the new safety regulations is useless. And why is it useless? Because they weren't preventive. They didn't prevent the fire or the injuries. Now Q. Any regulations that can potentially prevent money are useful. So going against the idea that complying with the safety regulations is useless, because Q is saying that even if people weren't injured, money was saved. Money is wasted even if no one is injured. So by complying with these regulations, they're able to stop the wasting of money, and that is showing that it's useful. So looking at it, it seems as though when Q is responding to P, Q isn't denying that injuries don't happen. It's just creating a broader definition of the word useful. P is saying that the safety regulations are useless, and Q is saying any regulations that prevent money. So it's adding a caveat into the idea of what usefulness is, and that is how Q is advancing their argument. So now let's go into our questions and see what lines up with that. Okay. A, extending the basis for assessing the utility of complying with the new regulations. Yeah, that's pretty good. I mean, again, Q is saying that if it prevents money from being wasted, it's useful. So it's adding something new to P's argument. So we'll keep A. B, citing additional evidence that undermines P's assessment of the extent to which the new regulations would have prevented injuries in last year's laboratory fire. B is looking tricky. The first half of it does sound pretty good because Q is bringing in some additional evidence, additional information about the money, but Q does not go against P's idea that the regulations could have prevented injuries. And we have that from our proof. Money's wasted even if no one is injured. So Q isn't doubting that people aren't getting injured. So B is out. C, giving examples to show, this is already giving me a red flag because what examples were really cited? To show that the uselessness of all regulations cannot validly be inferred from the uselessness of one particular set of regulations. Again, where are examples? And second, are we saying that just because this regulation wasn't followed well, that that all regulations are bad? That's not even what P is saying. So how could Q be responding to that? D, showing that P's argument depends on the false assumption that compliance with any regulations that would have prevented last year's fire would be useful. Again, we have to ask ourselves, is this even happening? Q is not implying that P's argument depended on the false assumption about preventing the fire. Again, we're just talking about safety regulations that will prevent some accidents. And whether or not there is an accident, money is wasted. So again, Q is not saying that these regulations would have prevented the accident. It's just that it would have prevented some of the money from being wasted in the event there was one. Okay, E, pointing out a crucial distinction overlooked by P between potential benefits and actual benefits. So again, this is looking pretty good at first because we are pointing out a crucial distinction in the definition of usefulness between potential and actual. But this is where E kind of loses us. What are the potential versus the actual benefits that we're comparing? Q is saying that we're saving money even if no one is injured. Those are actual benefits. There's no potential benefits. So E is out and A is our answer.